you know. Let me just start with something most people don't say out loud. Nobody really fears old age because of wrinkles or grey hair. That's not it. What people fear is this: sitting alone one day and thinking, did my life actually mean anything? That question hits harder than anything physical. And Carl Jung, he didn't just talk about growing old. He actually understood it in a way most people still don't today. Because to Jung, old age wasn't the ending. It was the real beginning of you becoming whole. And today, I want to show you something simple but deep. 4 pillars from Jung's psychology that can completely change how you see aging, and even how you live right now. And don't worry, we're not doing any complicated psychology talk here, just real life, real feelings, real meaning, so stick with me, because somewhere in here you might recognize yourself. Pillar 1. You stop pretending to be someone else. Let's start here. Jung called it individuation, but forget the word for a second. Let's make it simple. It means you stop living as the version of you that other people created in their heads, and you slowly start becoming you. Not the people-pleaser, not the strong one who never breaks, not the I'm fine version when you're not fine, just you. And here's the funny thing. Most people think aging is about losing things, but Jung would say aging is actually about losing the masks. And let me ask you something real quick. How many versions of yourself are you currently maintaining? At work, you're one person. With family, another. Online, another. Alone. Maybe something completely different. That's a lot of acting, right? Now imagine getting older with all those masks still on. That's where people feel empty. Not because life is gone, but because they never became real to themselves. And Jung would basically say, old age becomes peaceful when you finally stop performing. And I love that, because it means peace is not something you chase later, it's something you drop into when you stop pretending. Now let's go deeper, because this next one, people don't like it at first, but it's powerful. Pillar 2. You face the part of you keep avoiding. Okay, this one is called the shadow, and before your mind goes spiritual or scary, relax. It's just the parts of you don't like to admit. Jealousy, anger, insecurity, fear of being left out, even pride. The stuff we usually say, no, that's not me. But Jung would say something wild here. He'd say, the shadow is not your enemy, it's your hidden energy. And most people go through life trying to delete their shadow, but it never disappears. It just shows up in other ways, in frustration, in projection, in judging others too fast. Now here's where it connects to aging. If you never face your shadow when you're young, it doesn't go away, it waits. And later in life, it comes out as regret, bitterness, or emotional heaviness. But when you face it, something changes. You stop being easily triggered. You stop blaming everyone for how you feel. You become calmer, not because life is easier, but because you're no longer split inside. And let me ask you something. Have you ever met an older person who is just peaceful? Not perfect, just calm. They're not easily shaken. That's not age alone. That's integration. That's shadow work without calling it shadow work. They stopped fighting themselves. And Jung would say, when you make the unconscious conscious, you become whole. Simple, but not easy. All right. Now this next one might sound uncomfortable, but stay with me, because this is where real freedom starts. Pillar 3. You stop trying to be important. Now this one is tricky, because all of us want to feel important, to matter, to be remembered, to be seen. Nothing wrong with that. But Jung noticed something interesting. He saw that as people age, the ego starts to struggle, because the world doesn't always clap the same way anymore. Less attention, less validation, less noise around your name. And that's where some people suffer. Not because they are weak, but because they were living off attention without realizing it. So Jung's third pillar is almost like a soft awakening. You stop needing life to constantly confirm your worth, and instead, you start feeling it from inside. Let me say it differently. At some point in life you realize you are not here to be impressive. You are here to be real. And when that shift happens, something soft enters you. You don't chase every opinion anymore. You don't fight every misunderstanding. You don't need every person to get you. And honestly, that's freedom. Because the older you get, the more you realize peace is not found in being understood by everyone. Peace is found in not needing everyone to understand you. And this is where a lot of people actually start aging beautifully, not because life gets easier, but because the ego finally relaxes. And now, we're getting to something deeper. Something Jung believed was the final stage of psychological growth. Pillar 4. You start living for meaning, not just survival. This one is everything. Because early life is usually about survival. Build something, prove something, get somewhere, and that's normal. But Jung noticed something powerful. He said, if you only live for survival, you will feel empty later. Because survival alone doesn't answer the deeper question, why am I here? So the fourth pillar is this shift. You start living for meaning, not status, not comparison, not competition, meaning. And meaning can look simple, helping someone, creating something honest, sharing wisdom, fixing relationships, making peace with your story, even just becoming more present. And here's something important. Meaning doesn't always feel exciting. Sometimes it feels quiet, almost invisible, but it fills you in a way excitement never does. And Jung believed this is where old age becomes truly rich, not rich in money, rich in inner life. Because when meaning is strong, loneliness doesn't feel empty anymore. It feels reflective. Silence doesn't feel scary anymore. It feels alive, and you stop asking, what am I getting from life? And start asking, what is life asking from me now? That shift, that's maturity. Now let me bring all of this together for you, because these four pillars, they don't work separately. They build on each other. Let me say it simply. First, you stop pretending. Then you face yourself. Then you stop needing approval. Then you start living with meaning. And somewhere in that process, you don't just get older, you get lighter, more honest, more grounded, more you. And here's something I really want you to hear before we end this part. Most people think happiness in old age comes from avoiding pain. But Jung would almost flip that idea. He would say, happiness in old age comes from integrating your entire life, even the messy parts, especially the messy parts, because nothing gets wasted when you understand it. Not regret, not mistakes, not detours. They all become part of your wholeness. And I want to ask you something real here, not just as a viewer, but as a human being. If your older self could talk to you right now, what do you think they would say? Would they tell you to chase more? Or would they tell you to become more honest? Sit with that for a second, because sometimes that answer changes everything. And look, we don't need to rush life. We don't need to force clarity. But we can start noticing. We can start becoming aware of the masks, the shadows, the need for approval, and the deeper need for meaning. Because once you see these things, you can't really unsee them, and that's a good thing. So I'll leave you with this thought. Old age is not something that happens to you. It's something you build, starting now, in the choices you make, in the honesty you allow, in the parts of yourself you stop running from, and in the meaning you choose to live for. And maybe the real question isn't, how do I age happily? Maybe the question is, am I becoming someone my future self will feel at peace with? If something in this hit you, I'd really like to hear it, not the perfect answer, just the real one. What part of this felt like it was talking directly to you? So listen. Before you click away, I want to hear from you. Not the perfect answer. Just the real one. Which one of these 4 pillars hit you the most? Was it the idea of dropping the masks, facing your shadow, letting go of needing approval, or finally living for meaning? Drop it in the comments. I'm actually reading them. And if this made you think a little deeper about your own life, then don't just close this and move on like it was nothing, because sometimes what changes a person's life is not the whole video, it's one sentence that stays in their mind after everything else is gone. So I want to ask you something simple. What part of this actually stayed with you? Not what sounded good, not what made sense, but what stayed. Because there's a difference. Some things we hear, and some things we feel, and the things we feel, they don't leave easily. So if something in here touched you even a little bit, don't keep it locked inside your head. Drop it in the comments, not because I want engagement, but because sometimes when you put it into words, you understand yourself a little better, and you never really know who's reading it. Someone might scroll down, see your comment, and realize they're not the only one feeling that way. That's how conversations start. That's how people feel less alone. That's how small moments become meaningful. And honestly, that's what this space is about. Not just watching videos, but actually feeling something while you're here. And hey, if you're still here right now, I want you to notice something about yourself. Most people don't stay till this point. They click, they leave, they move on. But you stayed. And that tells me something simple. You're not just here for noise. You're here for something deeper, even if you can't fully explain it yet. And that's okay, because sometimes you don't need full understanding. You just need awareness, just noticing. Okay, this actually made me think. That alone is powerful, because most people go through their days without even pausing like that. Now listen, we're not done here, not even close. Because the deeper you go into these ideas, the more life starts to feel different. Not louder, not faster, but clearer, and a bit more honest. You start noticing things you used to ignore, like how you talk to yourself when no one is around, like the roles you keep playing without realizing, like the quiet pressure you've been carrying for years. And at first, it can feel a bit uncomfortable, because awareness does that. It doesn't always comfort you immediately. Sometimes it just shows you things as they are. But if you stay with it long enough, something changes. You stop reacting to life on autopilot. You start seeing patterns. You start understanding yourself instead of just judging yourself. And slowly, you begin to feel a little more present in your own life. Not perfect, not fixed, just more aware. And that awareness, that's where real change starts. Not in big dramatic moments, but in small shifts in how you see things. So yeah, stick around for the next one, because what we're going to talk about next goes even deeper into this whole idea of becoming yourself. And I'm not going to spoil it for you, but let's just say you might start seeing your own life from a completely different angle. Not because I'm telling you what to see, but because life has a strange way of revealing things when you're finally quiet enough to notice them. And when that happens, you don't really go back to the same version of yourself again. Something shifts, not loudly, not in a dramatic, everything changed overnight kind of way, but quietly, almost like your mind just opens a little more space for truth. And suddenly, things you used to rush past, you start noticing. Things you used to ignore start making sense in a different way. People you used to misunderstand, you start seeing a little more clearly. Even your own reactions, your thoughts, your patterns, they don't feel like random chaos anymore. They start to look like something you can actually understand. And that's the strange part about awareness. Once it starts, it doesn't really stop, it just keeps unfolding, layer after layer, moment after moment. And I think that's what makes it powerful, because you stop living on autopilot, and you start actually being here while your life is happening. Now don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean everything becomes easy. It doesn't mean you suddenly have all the answers, but it does mean something changes in how you carry things. The same problems might still be there, but you're not carrying them the same way anymore. There's a little more space inside you, a little more breathing room, a little more understanding. And over time, that changes everything. Not all at once, but slowly, naturally, without force. So yeah, not because I'm telling you what to see, but because you might start noticing what was already there. And when that happens, you don't really go back to the same way of thinking again. So I'll see you there. And until then, just carry this with you for a bit. Not everything in your life needs to be solved today. Some things just need to be understood slowly, one layer at a time, no pressure, no rush, just awareness. All right. I'll see you in the next one.